And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever it is you happen to be watching this video lecture. This is, what is this, our fourth video lecture? I lose track of the numbers. Glad you're here, glad you're watching. Make sure at some point during this video lecture there's going to be a question that I'll need you to post an answer to in the reply section of this discussion board. That will register your attendance, so make sure you do that. Also, make sure you watch all of this video lecture, because at some point in this video lecture I am going to show you a real zombie. Yes, that is correct. I will show you an actual zombie. I was going to say an actual real live zombie, but it's kind of a contradiction. And no fair fast forwarding to the zombie, because I will know. So just stick with it, and at some point there will be a zombie in this video. So we're talking about the brain and behavior. Oh yeah, by the way, I have my Virginia Tech hat on. I'm recording this on Sunday, so yes, I know that things did not go so well. Not sure what there's actually been a lot of discussion about the psychology about why Virginia Tech lost. Maybe because they had such a huge win against Ohio State that they were looking backward at that win. Everybody was talking about that, and they weren't focused on playing East Carolina. Maybe they thought that they wouldn't have any trouble with East Carolina because they did so well against Ohio State. But it's been interesting to hear all of the armchair psychologist commentators talk about that. Another example of how psychology exists in the world today. You may also notice that my skull is gone. That's because it's actually a coffee mug, and in honor of talking about the brain and behavior over the next few classes, I'll be drinking my coffee from Mr. Skull. And you all see our question here: are you nervous? And you may recognize this image if you are a science fiction fan, as you know that I am, from the movie Watchmen. And this image here is the beginning of a character named Dr. Manhattan. Dr. Manhattan was a scientist who unfortunately got trapped in a room where they were creating an extremely high electromagnetic charge. The charge diffuses his atoms into the universe and the atmosphere, and so he completely disintegrates. But his consciousness still exists, and he's able to figure out how to put himself back together. And this is a scene from the movie where he reassembles his nervous system. And so you can see, in fact, you can see the eyes there in the brain. And all these little blue strings are a computer-generated image of his nerves. And so that's what you see the movie says the nervous system looks like. Interestingly enough, this movie image is very close to the real thing. So here is a closer look at the Dr. Manhattan image, the computer-generated movie art version of the central of the human nervous system. And here's the real thing. This is pretty old, but this is an actual nervous system that was dissected by researchers from a human body, a cadaver, and you can imagine what kind of work it must have been to actually pull apart all of these nerves. There's a closer look, and you can see they actually have little paper or stickers labeling every single one of the nerves, and it's kind of interesting. This is what they had to do before they had the technology to actually have very complex computer-generated images. If you go over to the Virginia Tech Hurlian School of Medicine, they actually have a long anatomy table. It's a long high-definition video screen that lays out there like a person laying on the table, and you can use that screen to look through an entire computer-generated human body, including all the nerves. This obviously predates that technology. Pretty amazing stuff, and you can see how incredibly detailed that is. That's a more modern version of the human nervous system. So there you can see the nerves, the long ones, the thick ones, thinner ones, the brain up here. But you get a sense of just how incredibly complex the nervous system is. There's another image where you can see how the nerves relate to the bone structure, the skull, obviously here, the pelvis, and of course you would have these nerves integrated along with the muscles and the blood vessels. And it's pretty amazing when you think that this really controls or is involved in everything we do. You can kind of get a sense of why the researchers and the scientists who were inclined to the biological model, the biological approach to psychology would feel that way, because without all of these biological structures and systems, there is nothing. I mean, without all these nerves, it doesn't really matter what the brain does, because there's no way for you to actually make things happen. Without the brain, the nerves have no impulses, and without all of this, we're just a massive living tissue. And so you can kind of get a sense of why the biological approach was so attractive to researchers. All right, important things to know about the human nervous system. As I said, the human nervous system is incredibly complex. We have, as you see represented here, 100 billion, that's billion with a B, nerve cells, or otherwise known as neurons, in our body. 100 with a B. Now, one neuron, one nerve cell, is about 10 microns wide. And so if you took all of these neurons, 100 billion neurons, and you laid them side by side, it would be about 600 miles, 100 kilometers. So that's pretty remarkable. That gives you a sense of just how much nerve tissue, nerve fiber, how many nerves you've got within your body. And the integration of the human nervous system. Each neuron communicates with 10,000 other neurons, which is also pretty amazing when you think about a computer and all of the complexity within a computer's microchip. It's nothing compared with the complexity and the integration of the human nervous system and these neurons. And all of that information coming in is assimilated into the brain and becomes what you perceive as sight, sound, touch, smell, hearing, movement, all of those things. Now, getting down to specifics, this is something you need to know. We have two different types of nerves within the nervous system. You have afferent nerves and efferent nerves. Now, of course, when we have two things that we need to know the difference between, apparently psychologists feel it's very important to make them sound almost exactly alike. I don't understand why that is. But let me try to help you understand the difference between the afferent nerve and the efferent nerve. So afferent nerves affect you. Afferent nerves are the nerves that carry what you see, what you drink, what you taste, what you hear, all of those things that come into your sensory organs. Afferent nerves take that information to the brain. So afferent nerves carry information to the brain and the spinal cord. Think about things that affect you coming through your afferent nerves. Efferent nerves, they carry information out of your brain and spinal cord. The things you effect, the effect you have on things. Think about effect. You effect things. You are affected by things. You effect, efferent nerve, things. So in this situation, he sees the water, so the image of the water travels through his afferent nerves to his brain. His brain wants to drink the water, so his brain sends signals through the efferent nerves to his arm, the muscle, the hand. They grab the water, it moves, and he takes a drink. So afferent nerves carry to the brain, efferent nerves from the brain to the various muscles, arms, legs, and so forth. Of course, it's always helpful to have a visual, and so I've selected this video to help us understand how these things work. Alright, so which nerves are carrying the sensory input from him getting slapped on the head? That would be the afferent nerves. He is affected by the slap on the head. So let's try that again. Remember, it is the afferent nerves that affect you. So we're going to stimulate his afferent nerve pathways again. Yes, there we go. Afferent nerves. Everything he feels, the slap on the side of the head, those are his afferent nerves carrying that information to the brain and the spinal cord. But what about the efferent nerves? Could we maybe see the efferent nerves in action here? What's about to happen? There we go. Now the efferent nerves take over, and his brain and spinal cord sending signals to arms and legs. He actually gets the wrong guy. So here's an example: efferent nerve. And maybe that will help keep it in your mind. All right, divisions of the central nervous system. So over here to my right, you see the divisions of the central nervous system, and this is important. You see right there at the top, you see the brain, which would be held within the skull. It's almost the exact right size. Look at that. And remember, need to know this stuff, so pay close attention. The cerebrum and the cerebellum, the spinal column, those are nerves, neurons traveling through the spine, the spinal cord within the spine, all the way to the end. So this essentially is the center of the nervous system. And then you've got the peripheral nervous system. Peripheral meaning extending out from the central. So, and you don't have to memorize all of these, but so you've got your central nervous system here, and then you see how all of these other nerves extend out down the legs, out from the ribs, down the arms to the fingers. So that is the peripheral nervous system, everything that's outside. So central nervous system, the nerves within that are within the center, and the peripheral nervous systems, the nerves that are on the extend outward from the central nervous system. So going through that again really quickly, the central nervous system in the center, and then the peripheral nervous system. And the peripheral nervous system is divided into two sections. You have the somatic nervous system, and these are the sensory nerves. So if you touch something hot, or you cut yourself, or you're feeling the pressure on your hand as you hold something, those sensory nerves, that the senses travel up those nerves to your brain, and the motor nerves, the nerves that allow you to open and close your hand. They make the muscles contract and expand. And then you have the autonomic nervous system. And autonomic, think automatic. These are things that you don't really specifically have control over. So somatic nervous system, you can think, I'm going to open my hand or close my hand, and it does that. You have to think and make that happen. The autonomic nervous system, more of an automatic situation, and that is divided into two sections. The parasympathetic nervous system, which calms the body, parasympathetic, and the sympathetic nervous system, the nervous system that arouses the body. And when you're talking about the body being calmed and aroused, you're talking about the reaction to stress. Now, you've heard about the whole flight or fight reaction when something happens and suddenly your body is flooded with energy and you're very alert. That's the body's response to stressors, things that stress you out, that arouse your adrenaline and get you excited. That's the activity of the sympathetic nervous system. And in that case, you've got chemicals called corticosteroids that flood your body, and it focuses your attention on now. If you come around the corner in a dark alley and suddenly there's a big looming figure there, you're suddenly going to be very focused, and you're going to be ready to either fight whatever it is or run away. And now that's what's called acute stress. Stress that happens all of a sudden in reaction to an immediate situation that you find that you have to deal with. Acute stress is different from chronic stress. Acute stress is something that happens to when our nervous system arouses to protect us. For example, in that dark alley with that big looming figure, you are suddenly ready to run really fast, or you're ready to fight possibly harder than you normally would, and it exists to help you survive. Once you see that reaction is no longer needed, let's say you come around the corner and that big hulking figure turns out to be your friend Larry, then at that point, now that you no longer need to be stressed out, your parasympathetic nervous system is going to calm you down, and so you're going to breathe a sigh of relief and go, "Oh, Larry, it's just you." So sympathetic nervous system, you come around the corner, see this big hulking figure, you're afraid, you're going to have to fight, you're going to have to run, your muscles tense, you feel that adrenaline flash, and then he steps from the shadows and it's your friend Larry, and you say, "Ah, it's just you," and you can feel your body relaxing. That's the acute stress scenario with the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, when you have chronic stress, not the kind of stress of coming around the corner and seeing great big Larry there, who you think maybe is going to attack you. Chronic stress is something that is always there, and it could be your job, for example, or it could be somebody who maybe is in an abusive situation, and they're always afraid, they're always concerned that either they're going to get in trouble with their boss, or they're going to be abused by a family member. That kind of stress is with you all the time. You can sort of imagine that that fear, that intensity, that adrenaline, that flood of chemicals in your body to get you ready to fight when you come around the corner. In chronic stress, that's going on all the time. And so while your nervous system, while the sympathetic nervous system is arousing your body constantly, the parasympathetic nervous system never has a chance to come in and calm you down. And it's that calming down process when you come down off of that intense adrenaline push that allows your body to repair itself. And if your body can't repair itself from the effects of that constant building up stress, constant fear, then your immune system starts to break down, and it can actually be bad for your health. You can sort of think of this in terms of post-traumatic stress disorder. If somebody's dealing with PTSD and they're constantly afraid or constantly under stress, eventually it begins to affect them physically. Now there is a way to deal with that constant stress to limit the harmful effects, and we'll talk about that in another class. But for now, just know the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, and understand that acute stress, it's a short duration to protect you and improve your performance. And in that situation, the sympathetic nervous system arouses your body, and then the parasympathetic nervous system calms you. Chronic stress, the sympathetic nervous system is constantly keeping you aroused. Think sympathetic. It's sympathetic to your problems, so it's pushing you to be prepared. The parasympathetic parachute, it can't bring you down. The parasympathetic nervous system doesn't have the opportunity to calm you down, and so the immune system can have problems. So now we're going to look more closely at the actual cells that make up the nervous system, and these are really cool things. These cells, there are two of them, neurons, and we'll spend most of our time talking about the neurons. They are the nerve cells that handle the information processing. When we talk about those long strands that you saw on Dr. Manhattan and in that dissected structure, those are those long the wiring, essentially the wires that carry the signals that make things happen, the afferent and efferent nerves. There are other cells in the nervous system called glial cells. These cells provide support and nutrition, but it's the neurons that transmit the information. The glial cells, they're part of the supporting cast. And here you can see sort of a a description of here's the neuron, and remember, it's a cell. You know, in biology, you tend to think of cells as big old blobby things with a nucleus and the cell membrane. Well, it's kind of the same thing, except in a nerve cell, you've got, or neuron, you've got the nucleus here, you've got the cell body, and then here you've got these little branch things that look like branches off of a tree. These are called dendrites. And then if you travel along this long stretch of cell, and this is still the cell, you still got the cytoplasm within here. This is the axon. And the axon travels until it ends in these axon terminals right here. And here in the blue you see the glial cells that are helping to support the nerve, the neuron. But here's your neuron here. All this in yellow, that's going to be your neuron. Here's another, a little bit less complicated description graphic, and be familiar with this. Here you have the cell body of your neuron, the nucleus, the dendrites here, the little tree looking things, that long axon, and then the ending of the axon. And this is something a little new. This is a myelin sheath. It's sort of kind of like the insulation on a wire, and this myelin sheath actually helps the signals travel further along the axon. Some neuromuscular diseases, neurological diseases occur when this sheath breaks down and signals don't transmit along the nerves the way that they should. And got a couple of interesting videos. This next one here is actually going to show you neurons in action under a microscope. It's kind of cool. I don't think there's any words, but just watch. Cell division, growth, and activity recorded of actual neurons. And there you can see them growing. You can actually see, I think at one point, you see little dendrites. And if you look really close, you can see axons stretching there. And you can see there's axon stretching. These would be the dendrites here, and the axon moving along here. And so right along, and there goes another one. The myelin sheath would be covered here. It's kind of cool stuff. There you see an axon growing. There's a really example of the dendrite along here, and this long axon. All right. Anyway, I think you get the idea. And then if you look here, you see the you see the growth and the axons growing, and here you kind of get a better sense of how the nerve cells are connected, how they're connecting to each other. There you can see there's your axon and the terminals of the axon and terminals, and the flash is the actual, I believe that's the actual electrical activity that they can measure. And these are animal nerve cells, not human. But again, you can see the flashes as signals travel along those nerve cells, either afferent or efferent. And there again, you can see the flashing. You can sort of see how when there's a signal, it travels one cell. Very cool stuff. And if there we go. And this indicates how the information flows through the neuron. So here's your nucleus, here's your cell body, and then here are your dendrites and the axon with the sheath and the ends of the axon. Information comes in through the dendrites and then travels along the axon to the terminal buds of the axon. So this electrical signal starts here. Now the electricity doesn't come in through the dendrites. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the information starts in the dendrites, flows through the cell body, through the axon, and then ends up there at the end at the terminal buds. And here's where we have the principle of resting potential and action potential and the all or nothing potential. And I think we're going to get into that probably during our next lecture. Of course, this Friday we're going to be having the test. So what I want, well, let's see. I've got a couple of the videos. I'm not going to show them now. I'm going to show them later. But here you see how the neurons communicate. You've got the nucleus, the axon, the terminal connecting and communicating with these dendrites in that synapse, and then it continues to go. We'll talk about what goes on in this synapse and how these nerves connect together in our next, I guess it'll be our next video lecture. But in the meantime, promised you I'd show you a zombie. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to fast forward through all this that we're going to get to later. Here's your zombie. This is a zombie squid. Now, before I play this video, you need to know that this squid is not alive. There is no head. This is just the body of the squid. And this is obviously somebody's dinner. But watch what happens to the squid when the person eating the dinner pours soy sauce. All right, are you ready? Here we go. And I've got to warn you, this is one of the creepiest things you'll ever see. Now, the squid is dead. The squid is dead. It has no head. What's going on there? And in fact, that's sort of our question. That's going to be our question that I want you to reply in this video discussion board, so that I know you're watching. Post a short reply and tell me what you think is going on here. Why is the zombie squid moving? What could possibly be happening to make this squid, which is not alive, move like that? And use your critical thinking skills and post that there. And then we will also, coming up after the test and next week, be talking about brains. And so we have one of our favorite zombies coming after brains. No writing assignment, because I know you're studying for your test this Friday. So just post your reply regarding why you think that the zombie squid is moving, and then you can spend the rest of your time getting ready for the test, which we will have this Friday. Thanks a lot. Have a great week.